In July 1987, 48 young people from 12 different faiths and representing 10 countries of the world gathered together to begin the most remarkable journey of a lifetime. Coming from a variety of backgrounds, the group included students, teachers, a heavy goods vehicle driver and a managing director, to mention only a few. The youngest was a Sikh boy of 13, the average age 22. The composition of the group was an inspiration, in itself so different, yet pledged to travel together as a symbol of hope and unity. Their journey was to take them from London to Prague, Auschwitz to Moscow, Warsaw to Bergen-Belsen. In each place they would offer their prayers for peace and distribute gifts of friendship. Expectations were high as the pilgrims gathered at Mary Sumner House in London. Families, friends, reporters from the press and various radio stations, including the World Service of the BBC, added to the excitement. Few had met each other before, but the seeds of friendship were quickly sown. In Westminster Abbey, a signal of great hope was given when spiritual leaders from the Buddhist, Baha'i, Muslim, Sikh, Jewish, Hindu and Christian faiths offered prayers for peace and justice. After the service, the pilgrims were led to Dean's Yard by 2 Buddhist nuns for the photo call. Wherever we went, we presented the peace plaque to a representative of the host community. The international prayer for peace formed a border, inside of which were written all the names of the pilgrims and the purpose of our journey. A dove embossed in gold shone in the centre. We also blew bubbles for peace. They acted as a reminder of our prayers rising to God. Our first peace plaque was presented to the Dean of Westminster, who received it on behalf of the Abbey, after which we made our way to the press conference.
Say that we've had contacts with what we may regard. Religious label, and maybe religiously motivated young people working alongside ideologically motivated young people, and part of this venture.
We were beginning to draw alongside each other, sisters and brothers, part of one family, enjoying our differences and beginning to gain just some idea of the adventure which awaited us in the following 2 weeks. Not everyone was so enthusiastic about our mission. Our police permit to park outside the reception won no favour with the traffic warden, and we faced the first test of our peacemaking skills. However, we were in good spirits as we boarded the bus. Many messages of encouragement had been sent to the group, including a letter from the Archbishop of Canterbury which read, "It gives me great pleasure to send my blessings and greetings to the pilgrimage from London to Moscow." A journey of this sort had never been undertaken before, and it was our prayer that it might inspire people all over Europe, from every background possible, to cooperate together in the work for peace and justice. Rochester in Kent was our first stop. The Pollen Song had been specially adapted for us to sing together to express the purpose of our journey. As well as symbolically releasing 4 birds, we planted a maple tree, hoping that its leaves of many colours would illustrate the beauty of differences held in unity. Then onto the Gurdwara, where Surjit Singh Marwe spoke to us about the Sikh faith.
There is a lot of framework within the Sikh religion and tradition. What is important is the picture inside. And the picture inside is the picture in your heart.
After spending some moments in prayer, we were led upstairs where a sumptuous meal had been prepared. The church and the temple are near neighbours, and as well as making regular visits to each other, gifts are exchanged at the major festivals.
I wish you a very, very happy journey.
It was a good day, from church to Gurdwara and then on to the synagogue, where the Jewish community had arranged a special Friday Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei bari hagafen. Blessed art thou, Lord, who listens to prayer. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him, and when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. Behold, I send an angel before you, to keep you by the way, and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you, and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face to you, and give you peace.
And of course that in turn will always remind us of you. And while you're away, I can assure you we'll be thinking of you and praying for your success of your mission. God bless you all.
Thank you.
The synagogue secretary later told us that our visit had been one of the most inspiring he could remember. The next day, as our hearts rose with the sun, we arrived at a small village tucked into the hills called Wiesen in West Germany. For many years, the Joshua House of Peace had welcomed pilgrims, but never a group quite like ours.
What we managed to achieve here on a small scale, with some 50 people, can also be achieved on a much larger scale internationally and embrace the whole globe.
Because your enterprise is a genuinely European and at the same time a genuinely international and interfaith enterprise. Was Gruppe verzeichnet sind, als Geschenk für das Haus Joshua.
In the heart of the forest near Wiesen, a memorial stone marks the death of Soviet and other prisoners of war at the Kampfeg Scheide. A group of children and adults had gathered to welcome us and present us with flowers. This was the first place we would offer our prayers for peace.
Dear audience of friends of peace and understanding amongst all people in the world. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
This is one of the Shinto prayers. The first line, Tsushimite, means from our hearts. And Amaterasu Omikami is the name we use for the invisible God. And Gokaiun is we ask for good wishes for world peace.
There is only one religion, the religion of love. There is only one God, and He is omnipresent. The end of wisdom is freedom. The end of culture is perfection. The end of knowledge is love.
From one place of suffering we travelled to another. The village of Ladici had been razed to the ground by the Nazis. One of the surviving inhabitants guided us around the museum and watched as we planted our rose trees for peace. This increasing exposure to the atrocities of the past began to stir up strong feelings in the group.
People that don't know that have to know.
So you say that memorials like this shouldn't exist, full stop, because it's only for 150?
Why should you dispute it?
You've got my wrong point of view. This should exist if 150 people died, but so should everywhere else.
They do survive everywhere.
Then it's left up to us to make sure that the people here know.
Because it's here, that keeps peace, because it's a reminder. And if it was one person died and they built a monument, that is worthwhile, as far as I'm concerned.
But do you think they really know everything that happened in the war?
Do you know everything that happened in the war?
I think we know a damn sight more than what they do. A hell of a lot more.
So what can we do about it?
What? They're partly ashamed.
But you go ahead and you go and you cry your eyes out for these people, for 150 people that died in whatever the name of this place is. If you think that warrants, if you think that's what they deserve, if you think that.
We're trying to put through to you that this doesn't remind us of just the 100 people that died here. It's for this, yes, but it's also meant to trigger your mind for other Jews.
People don't know about this other place.
Hiroshima came over just 100. Hiroshima came over and sat down and said that they didn't think of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's what it has on him.
And we're saying when we come here, we forget everything else and we think this is a memorial to 150 people. When you come here, what do you as a German think?
A lively discussion followed with the German students. Later, at the Ecumenical Council, we were able to meet with Czech young people. Conversation wasn't easy with our differing languages and philosophies, but this didn't prevent us enjoying their warmth and friendship.
The world begins right here, and that first I have to change myself, then I have to change my family and friends, and then my local community and so on, and the world gets bigger and bigger all around me. But there's no way that I can possibly change the world, and it is wrong for me to change the world without first changing myself and those who are closest to me. And I also feel that I have a lot of power, and I shouldn't expect only organisations to do all the change for me.
When I heard this kind of question, because we are speaking about change, okay, but what kind of change? We want to change what? First of all, we want to change the word, okay. Yeah, I understand it, the word is, I don't know if the word is very bad, as we understand it. I don't believe it. I think there are a lot of good in this word. And sometimes I have experiences as well that when we change some things, we destroy more than to construct something good. And it's always my question. If you say, I have to change myself, and afterward I have to change my family, I have to change the society where I'm living. Okay, but it's not so easy.
Maybe for 5-10 years ago, it will be not possible that you will be here. And maybe that it will be not possible for me to be a member of the International Council of WCRP. But it is possible. But I have to fight for this, my participation, as you must work for your participation and for your coming here to our country.
Afterwards, we gave out gifts of bubbles to the local children, who, like children the world over, responded with spontaneity and happiness. Some forms of communication appeared to be international, though the cook had a lot to tolerate. The 50 carefully prepared pork cutlets had to be scrapped in deference to the vegetarians, and our persistence in asking about the origins of the soup stock and the fat for frying the eggs met with disbelief. In old Jewish Prague, the Terezin Memorial is housed, exhibiting the poetry and art of the children exterminated in the concentration camps, Many pilgrims shuffled by the pictures with tears tumbling down their cheeks, the tortured drawings of domestic scenes, family meals, football in the gardens, children sitting by the fire, dreams which for these children had remained only dreams. The next morning we ate our breakfast in a small Polish village. So began a day which became the darkest and most difficult of our journey. Some pilgrims were unable to enter the gates into Auschwitz, bewildered by what they saw and felt. Could we have any integrity in believing, in praying in such a place as this? Could we reconcile our journey of high and idealistic hopes when we were faced with this unavoidable horror?
Who died here? Many different people died here. Communists, trade unionists, the physically handicapped, the mentally disturbed, Christians who stood up against the Nazis, gay men, and the chronically sick. Jehovah's Witnesses also. And then there were the Jews and the Romanis. The Jews and the Romanis are a group apart because they were systematically annihilated, not for their beliefs, but for their culture. They had history, philosophy, music, poetry, literature, the legal system, a whole approach to life that was specific to them. And they were systematically annihilated for what they were born to be, which is Jews and Romanis.
At their peak, the crematoria were burning up to 20,000 people a day. Everything appeared suspended, frozen, gross evil eclipsing all light and goodness. In the heavy silence there was no escape from the cries, the heartache, the tormenting truth. Here we had no right to speak of God, yet speak of God we must. We sat together outside on the great memorial stone, a group of stunned and shamefaced pilgrims, burning with a naive desire to purge ourselves of responsibility. Yet we were implicated, and from guilt and emptiness we shared our prayers and our pain. We planted our seeds for a different world. We spent the next 31 hours travelling. During this long haul, the drivers gave us a very practical demonstration of peace when, forgetting their own exhaustion, they put on overalls and spent an hour changing the tyre of a coach full of German tourists. The drivers' perspiring faces became a symbol of the effort and cost involved in building real friendships between all people. In Minsk, we were welcomed by the priest of the cathedral, who spoke to us about the peace work of the Orthodox Church. It had taken 8 letters and 3 telegrams to elicit a response from the Patriarchate. They had then promised us a carefully planned programme involving contact with the various religious communities and secular peace groups. We also enjoyed meeting with a group of villagers who were surprised but pleased when we shared our gifts with them. In the evening, we camped. There was time for the group to pause and reflect upon the barrage of intense experiences with which they were having to cope. There was also a chance to relax, enjoy the fun of newly formed friendships, laugh over the nightly diet of Bombay mix and beans, and try to catch some sleep. We had finally arrived in Moscow. Impressions of the city bombarded us, its clean, impressive streets, the sense of discipline and order, the beautiful buildings, the low cost of travel, the absence of vandalism and graffiti. And yet food was so scarce, it seemed almost impossible to find anywhere to eat or drink. There was little choice and long queues. It was a city of contrasts, which both enthralled and threatened the pilgrims. On the second day, in the morning, we were welcomed at the synagogue, and one of the pilgrims was invited to read from the Torah. In the afternoon, we were received by the Islamic community at their mosque. We spent some time with those at prayer, and were then given an audience with the mullah, a fine old man who spoke to us sincerely about his people and answered the many questions arising from the pilgrims.
Well, of course, during their services, they also will call to people to work for peace. But again, they do it not from their present-day point of view, but using Quran. Because in Quran it is also written that you don't kill people, you know. It's very peaceful. So they use Quran always to the simple world.
Our gifts always had a genuine effect on people. Faces broke into smiles and eyes shone in response to our gestures of friendship. On the Sunday, we went to the Orthodox Cathedral. The service was to last 3.5 hours. We were mesmerized by the angelic singing, the luxurious decorations, the icons, the burning candles, and the incense. It was truly heaven, in comparison with the mundane and stark reality of life outside, and as such represented a potent force in society. It became apparent why such religion received suspicious attention from the state. We were disappointed that the program promised by the Orthodox Church hadn't in fact been arranged for us. Our contacts with the various faiths and our prayers for peace beside the tomb of the unknown warrior were organized by the group itself. This was in contrast to the elaborate welcome given to the leaders of the World Conference on Religion and Peace only a few months before. We were left with the impression that it was because we were young people with little status or power that our pilgrimage had not been given similar hospitality. On our last day in Moscow, we went to the Danilov Monastery.
So good morning, dear friends, brothers and sisters.
Очень рады приветствовать вас в нашем Свято-Даниловом монастыре.
We are very happy to see you here in Danilov Monastery.
Большое вам спасибо, что вы нашли возможность.
Thank you very much that you managed to find some time to come here.
Мы открыты ко всем христианам.
Russian Orthodox Church is open to all religions of the world, to all Christians of the world.
Всякий верующий в него не погиб.
Because in the Gospel, they speak about that people shouldn't kill each other, but should live in friendship and peace.
After an exchange of gifts, we were given a tour of the monastery. Sadly, the Sikh pilgrims were prohibited from entering the newly built cathedral because of their turbans. On questioning this, it was made clear that due to complaints following the previous WCRP meeting, the monastery officials had introduced a new policy. It was a sign of our mutual respect that the group as a whole decided we couldn't enter the cathedral without our Sikh friends. Smolensk, the atmosphere was more relaxed. We sat on a street eating a picnic without causing anyone offence. We walked through a park and mischievously disrupted a school outing by blowing our bubbles. The youngsters loved it, even if the teachers didn't. Children from the local school stand guard by the eternal flame in Minsk. To do so is an honour awarded to the worthiest pupils. Their pride was evident as they clutched unloaded guns and with true military precision marched into their places. We gathered there to offer our prayers for peace. It was a strange sight, young pilgrims at prayer and young pilgrims on guard, around the memory of the savage waste of war.
And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.
The concentration camp of Belsen was a vast wasteland, silent and sombre. The trees, the remaining mentors of what had been. In this open space, languid with grief, the pilgrims stood in silent respect and sorrow. The group hadn't eaten for 17 hours, so all hopes had been set on our evening hosts. Unfortunately, no food had been provided, but 20 phone calls around the British Army worked miracles. The Royal Military Police contacted the Welsh Guards, who 2 hours later arrived with tureens of sausages, peas, boiled potatoes, sweet tea, bananas, bread, butter, jam. It was unbelievable. Some pilgrims ate 20 sausages.
Very inspiring and sort of something very special. I think it's something that is really a bit of a dream fulfilled, isn't it? You have managed to show that you can be witnesses together for peace. And you've travelled far, you've been exhausted, you've been hungry, and still you've got that extra power and strength to lead you on, will take you back home safely, and you know it's all worthwhile for His sake. And I think it's lovely to have this very good sense of love here in this church hall tonight. I mean, I haven't been here before. I'm not far down the road. You brought me here. I think it's really...
It was a wonderful last night together. The Peace Pilgrims, receiving the trust and generosity of Her Majesty's Defence Forces stationed in West Germany, and presenting to them a peace plaque. The group also relaxed and laughed and enjoyed the depths of their friendship. On our return, we reflected about our experiences.
Probably the last thing is that travelling together and the places that we've been
and especially going to Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen, and also being in the Soviet Union, is really significant and important that we've been here together, and that we've been on the bus and we've travelled and we've got to know each other and we've eaten horrible food together. We felt really pleased about the feeling of trust between group members. In fact, we all got on so well together when we were living in such close proximity. Obviously, there were quite a few conflicting things said to us in Russia. The one thing we could say the young Russian people was that they were incredibly enthusiastic and were willing to put up with a few diverse things for things that they believe would get better in the future. And we thought this was a very positive thing. And from this, we've learned that we really can't judge these Eastern Bloc matters with our Western Bloc preconceptions. It is very different. It's a very different culture and a very different attitude. Obviously not perfect.
By the last day, we were a transformed group of pilgrims, sisters and brothers of one family. We had glimpsed a new way of life, an enriching, inclusive, cooperative, joyful, laughing celebration of our differences, truly threads which had become woven together into a tapestry of peace.
In our unity and our differences, let us know the uniqueness that is God. May our courage match our convictions and our integrity match our hope. May our faith in you bring us closer to each other. May our meeting with past and present bring blessing for the future. Amen.
Our final service of prayer was held in the Westminster Synagogue in London, followed by a reception at the Baha'i Centre. As we said our goodbyes, it was good to remember just some of the comments made by the pilgrims, comments which expressed the promise and the potential the journey had released for the future. One thing we had learned was that we couldn't wake up one morning and decide to be peaceful, and the next morning be ordinary, and the next be peaceful. One can't fluctuate. You've got to make a commitment of your life to be that way the whole time. We also felt that by sharing with one another the griefs and the sorrows, as well as the enjoyable times we did have, that we could commit ourselves towards peace and towards everlasting friendship, and I'm sure we will all do that. One of the main things that came up was that we learned to accept and appreciate one another's religions, not just to accept them, but to realize they are on a par with our own as far as the potential they give for the individual, and that the whole bus was a sort of symbol that from the diverse backgrounds that we come from, we could become friends and work together.